I'm Zach Bodenner. I'm the JS coordinator for the city of Eden Prairie. And today I'd like to talk about kind of an ongoing project that I'm working on for the city to spruce up our park finder. What we have right now is perfectly functional, kind of boring. So I kind of wanted to improve this because it's been sitting there as kind of a legacy application from before even my time there. And it's just gotten kind of life support type upgrades until now. So we're going to talk about using Experience Builder and Arcade to kind of make it pop a little bit. The big things that we're going to need to sort of make this work is that we need Experience Builder in the developer edition. And the reason for that is because one of the kind of key pieces of this app that I'm putting together is a custom widget, which sounds scarier than it turns out to be. Sounded scary to me, and a little bit of poking can kind of go a long way, I think. So we need a code editor to take a look at that, and then some kind of vector graphic editor. In our case, we have Adobe Illustrator, but you can use any number of those. But most importantly, you need a good data structure, which is something that we all kind of understand, but the data structure that was driving our park finder before I started working on this project was really sort of inconvenient and didn't work super well with actually helping people find what they were looking for and where they should actually go, especially in the case of some of the larger parks, which are not entirely contiguous or kind of spread out in terms of the amenities and activities that they offer. And then also, lastly, you need someone in your parks department with some free time or someone who likes you and cares about this kind of stuff, which I was fortunate enough to have. To identify our need, the Eden Prairie Parks Finder is fine. The data structure has not been super conducive to a good park finder. We have one layer that's a shapefile of our parks that had like a count of the different numbers of amenities and things, and that worked out okay, but we've been relying on this query widget that didn't really do a whole lot of heavy lifting for us. And just to kind of show off what that looks like, go over to our park finder here. So we had a query widget where you can search for a park activity. Say we want to find all parks that have baseball, and then we just we get a highlight. And, sure, that's fine. You can zoom in and kind of determine where you might want to go. But you don't really get any additional details about any of the actual facilities or what kind of, the size of the baseball fields, whether they participate in rec leagues or not. So it left kind of a lot to be desired. The query tool it's fine. It requires a lot of clicks to get where you're going. And the hope was to sort of minimize the amount of extra stuff someone from the public would have to figure out how to use in order to effectively do it. But finally, there was absolutely no ownership or update policy with this application. So parks that have had massive replacements of playground equipment, different fields, 5 years ago, more when this was built, no one played pickleball, but now everyone plays pickleball, and we got tons of pickleball courts. And that wasn't even something that we were tracking. So, we need someone who can actually find and make these updates when they're appropriate. But in terms of the goal, the vision was something kind of like this application, which I'll go show off in a minute. But I found this just kind of on a whim, browsing through Experience Builder like gallery examples. And this is an application to find different recreational activities managed and I highlighted by the Ireland Sports Commission. And I thought this was really cool because it formally categorizes things into different types of features that you would want to click on and get information for. It's got really cool filter buttons, which I'll show a little live thing here in a moment. The theming's consistent, and it's kind of a nicely put together application in my opinion. So to kind of show off what that looks like, these little filter pills, which is what the Experience Builder application calls them, These are custom made, and basically it extends a couple of properties of the filter that you don't get in the out of the box experience builder. Basically, there's a little hover text, hover color when you select one of these things, and then as you click, it will apply that filter using the or operator. So you get anything that's disability sports or leisure and recreation. You can click on a feature, you get a little nice little pop-up, and then they have theirs grouped in different types of activities. So you have clubs and groups, trails. So if I want to then say, well, I want those two things plus also walking trails, those will populate on the map as well now. Places to be active. So that's kind of the framework that I used when I started working on our application. And these are 3 different instances of the filter widget, which is a complication that we'll get to in a moment. But overall, I think that comparing or seeing the map in the list view to help find where you want to go, I think is a pretty cool way to do it. And overall, it's relatively simple. People like icons. We kind of get what they're trying to tell us relatively quickly. And having 2 major ways to view the information is kind of handy. But then we also want to make sure we have someone who's capable of doing maintenance and identifying sort of the mitigation of drawbacks that we'll have to switch over to a new application. So the way I wanted to structure this is 1 layer for all of these features. It makes it easy to just utilize a few different attributes to separate them out into these different groups. And then the users can filter based on what they're looking for. We're going to use Arcade in the web map to drive the pop-ups kind of based on those different, I guess we'll call them activity types, but activities, amenities. And then also the parks polygons, which is going to help prevent us from having to actually update data in the parks polygon at feature class as well as the points. And I'll show how that works when we get to the web map portion. And we also want photos because people like photos. And I think that it helps drive engagement. So we wanted to set up a way to make sure people can see some pictures about these things. And then, the icons and the custom widget that I already talked about. But of course, you never set out on a project like this without running into some problems. I don't know JavaScript. I'm not a coder. I've been working on building up those arcade muscles, but dealing with the Experience Builder Developer Edition code is a bit beyond me in most cases. I also have no guidance from stakeholders. I started this project and I said, "Do you like it?" And they said yes, fortunately. But that also was kind of a handy thing because I kind of got to drive it from the beginning. The other thing that is kind of a big deal, a big problem to solve anyway, is that we've been maintaining a park asset inventory for a few years now. And while the recreation and amenity points in this new feature class kind of are related to those park assets, they're not always a one-to-one correspondence. And I have a slide here coming up that'll kind of explain what I mean by that. And also, being not a coder, I needed to use a little bit of help from some large language models, and they make stuff up. I don't know if you've ever received a response like that. Good catch. Thank you. You're absolutely correct, Zach. And probably very good at basketball and classical piano as well. Just stroke the ego a little bit. But unfortunately, a lot of time spent trying to provide the right prompts and get good inputs from something like this. Makes it a little bit challenging, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without a little bit of code crunching. Shout out to Claude instead of ChatGPT if anyone really does a lot of experimenting with these. But we also had a lot of good going for us too. So we have a clean slate in terms of data structure. I've been working with Experience Builder for a while. We finished our migration from Web App Builder 2 years ago, which has been a big help because it's allowed me some time to sort of play around with it. Like I said, the park's maintenance crew have been gathering park asset data for years, so we have a good place to start from in that regard as well. John teaches great arcade. If you haven't taken his workshop yet, please, for your sake, do that. It's very, very good. And no, this is completely willful shout out on my part. Yes. So like I said, the disadvantage and an advantage that these large language models can do so much. And then the Esri community, which is always a really, really great help. I'll put a plug in for that as well. It's a really great place to learn and get, very good unjudgmental feedback from people. Okay, so what did I actually do? I'm going to kind of speed through the custom widget development because there's only so much that I can actually show that's worth like staring at up here during a presentation. But essentially, the starting point was copying the filter widget and then kind of trying to identify where the widget renders in the user interface. So started off with some fairly simple like styling changes. So that top right little picture of code there is, what happens if I change the icon size from small to large in these filter pills? And it's dramatic. Turns out you need a different property in order to make that work. So, strike one there. And then, once you start figuring out kind of which properties tweak which things, you can dig a little bit deeper. So developed a custom pill button class in like the style file associated with this widget, where you can basically force it to overwrite some of the code that it pulls from like the Esri portion of it, which is really, really handy because a lot of that stuff is completely obscure to you if you're just using the drag and drop widget. Also, I had to blow it up multiple times. There were instances where I thought I was getting somewhere great with the prompts from the large language models, and then eventually it became clear that they didn't know what they were talking about either, and I just needed to start fresh. So, yeah, another big shout out to failure and trying again. So the things I learned is that you don't actually need to do a lot of editing to alter styling and indeed exposing some of those properties. Once you find a thing that works, it's very easy to copy and paste and use it again. And this desired widget was very specific, so I didn't really need to worry about side effects. I wanted it to do one thing, and if it did that thing, cool, it works. So there's a rundown of the different code files that needed to be edited in order to make it work. If you're curious about details, I can provide some. But for the most part, I'm not going to get too much into that. So back to that big problem that I was talking about with the multiple instances of the filter widget. Experience Builder, if you are providing it with queries from more than one source, will always rely on the AND operator. And it makes a lot of sense for it to do that. So basically that means is if you've got a filter and then also you use a search or use a query, it's going to find things that satisfy both of those. But in our case, which is one of the things that became very apparent with the Esri or the Ireland application, is that those filter widgets are not working with an AND operator. They're working with an OR operator. And so there's one edit that I needed to make to the entire Experience Builder framework. So that's site-wide edit that basically switched that from AND to OR. And it turns out that Developer Edition is great because I can make that switch, deploy this application, and switch it back to AND for the next application that I'm working on, if you remember to do that. And if you don't remember to do that, you cause problems for yourself. So the knock on the solution that we found for that is we actually deployed an experience builder environment just on a different server to be the one place where we don't have to remember to switch it back and forth, and we just deploy this experience from that server instead of my local workstation copy. So basically, this is kind of I can actually pull up the application here to show it in real time. But basically, we wanted consistency across the application. So the filter widget that we customized here, you supply the icon, and that's one of the out-of-the-box features. And then that'll show up on the filter pill here, where we've stripped out the text that comes along with it. We strong-armed a square icon, basically to ensure that every one of them is the same size. It's not bleeding out of the edge of that, or rather not bleeding out, but not getting cut off by the edge of that filter pill. And then we've also placed that in the pop-up of the particular recreation point that you click on. And in that way, we sort of, we have the same thing that we tie all the way across. Same thing with colors. So much like that application that I showed from Ireland, Get Ireland Active, we have a theme color that applies to each sort of group of features. So what did we actually do for that? We have to determine which features fall into which category. What's an activity and what's an amenity? What's an amenity and what's a location? So then we use attribute rules to sort of force linking out to that icon, populate a park name and an address, and all that stuff. So, we developed that icon set, stored them on our server, and that's where the links point to. So we can consistently reference that just based on the attributes of the actual points. Lots of data entry. I went all over the entire city, placed a point for every single one of these things. And that took a long time, but at the beginning of summer, it turns out everyone in parks and utilities is very, very busy and they don't want to talk to you. So you have some time to work on stuff for yourself. So here's the data mismatch I was talking about. So you can take the the two side-by-side pictures here as kind of an example of what I mean. So on the left is our park asset inventory, and the maintenance crew, they stored the tennis courts as 1 point for each net. The volleyball courts, as you can kind of tell by the aerial, has 4 nets, and they've stored it as 1 point. And then the basketball court, by rule has 2 hoops or something, but it still is 1 court per 1 point. So we have an interesting situation where we have 3 kind of similar features, but all of them are represented a little bit differently in a way that makes sense to the maintenance staff, but wouldn't make sense to me if I wanted to go play volleyball and I think I really want to make sure I get a court. I'm not going someplace where there's only 1 net. I want to go to a place where there's lots of people. Maybe we're having a tournament or something. Knowing that there's 4 nets at that particular park is valuable to me as someone who's going to seek that out. And that's kind of how you can see that represented on the right-hand side, plus the addition of the 6 pickleball courts. Again, shout out to the pickleball players. And then the web map, basically we're just using some arcade code to create kind of like sections you can think of that are dependent upon what kind of feature is being clicked on. So we can say, if that's a court of some kind, then we want to include this section of code called shared court. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. But also leveraged a few other things like a link from the lakes to the DNR's Lake Finder website. And then we used a couple other cool arcade functions to kind of spiff up the actual park polygon layer as well. Okay, so enough of the PowerPoint slides. Let's go look at it. So this is what we're working with right now. And the similarities are clearly there, but I wanted to, make it our own. This is our style of application here. So we can hover over the different hills and see the name of the activity or amenity that we're looking for here. So, if we hit our pickleball button, we can see where all of the different pickleball courts are. We'll zoom in a little bit. So the base map resolves, and then the pop-up, still in demo mode. So, I've got very descriptive text on some of these. But then we can add other features like, okay, well, I'm biking to the park today. Do I have a place to park? Maybe not right next to the courts. Am I comfortable leaving my bike out of eyesight? Depends on where you're going. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. But some of these, as I mentioned, have been recorded by the park's maintenance staff, and they've already got pictures. So I was able to pull those in and apply those to these new points as well. And you can see the little icon rendered in the park points pop up as well as that color consistency coming across. The application right now has the map view as well as the list view, kind of similar to the Ireland app, and that's going to honor that filter. It's a page-wide filter as well, so we can filter it down to see all of the bike racks. We'll scroll down farther. We'll get to the pickleball courts. Selecting one will switch you back to the map and zoom you to the location, which again is meant to really facilitate easy movement around the application, because the worst thing is getting trapped in either of these and not being able to kind of effectively find out where you're going. Yeah.
How are you working with trails?
Great question. So we have a trails layer, and I've been working on. So they all have a trail ID that was relevant to our pavement management system, which is outside of the Esri ecosystem, but the ID number is important. So I learned the hard way, because no one told me we had that you can't actually change those, or that causes problems. So I created our own kind of like a trail ID for like groups of trail segments that logically make a trail. So I've been applying those to, let's go down here. So we've got a trail and wrote a little arcade code that basically takes the ID of whatever segment you click on, filters the entire data set, and then sums up the length. So you get this kind of convenient little, how long is the trail? How long is this segment? So all of these, if I click on this, it's got the same trail ID as this one, to the south and to the north of it. And then the goal is when you find the trailhead point, it will tell you, the length of the trail, and that's because in the points feature class there is a trail ID sort of match field. So it's filtering on that. Exactly. Yep. So it's just searching out points that we have added to the database as being a trailhead. Let's go there. So we have those down there. So you could find a trailhead, and I need a place to fill up my water. Apparently this conservation area parking lot is not a great place to get a drink. But that just goes to, to kind of illustrate how you can steer people to the place they want to go. Then let's go over to a park with a couple more, varieties of things. So we also built out, minimize that. Might be a little harder to read, but it makes the application look better. So the park feature class is, it's a polygon. But if you are planning a trip to a park holistically and you don't want to click on all of these. Oh yeah, sorry, question.
Play soccer, play lacrosse, play football.
Yeah.
And got other activities.
So this is one of the great things about having a data set that I created from the start. No one has any expectations of me. I just added a field in that in the point feature class that says, is this a shared field? yes or no, and you have that on there. So then we'll go over to an example. Over here at, this is the big athletic complex. Actually, go over to one of the different ones. Okay, so if you're over here at Miller Park, soccer, football, and it just has that field letting people know that, this is a shared, and you might be able to infer that if you have all of your points on, but if you've already filtered, you might not notice that. And so it's nice to have that field with a little arcade script saying, if that is yes, and it is soccer, football, lacrosse, then say this field is shared. And we have the same thing for courts for, tennis and basketball and pickleball and all that. And then the actual parks, we worked on this group by arcade function, which basically says, first, match the recreation points that have the same park name as the park that you've clicked on, and then summarize how many of each thing there are in the park, and then also show me the icon. So that kind of helps you plan sort of a, like, I'm going to this park today, what can I reasonably expect? Do we have restrooms? Like, how many restrooms are there? And then from there, you can find them on the map and say, okay, well, give me some information about that. I don't know how many parents of young children there are in the room, but like, if it's winter, I want to know if I'm on a time clock or if I got a place my kid can go to the bathroom, so like, is this there in the winter? It's a big deal, when people are planning how to use this stuff. So that's kind of the application in a nutshell. And are we okay on time? Okay. So we'll go. Man, this thing time's up fast. Okay, there we go. So here's the actual application, the experience builder portion of it, and how you interact with the filter widget. So basically, we just extended 3 properties. Tell me the fill color of the pill, as well as the color that you get when you hover over it, as well as the outline that will be there once you clicked on it. And I really like this because, or extending all of these properties, because you move. If you notice the Get Ireland Active application, their hover color will change, but their sort of selected pill color is the same across all of them. And it's not like that big of a deal, but I kind of like having it selectable. Gives you a little bit more freedom to choose how you want your application to look. But then basically, we just add a different filter item for each of the activities or amenities, whatever that we want. SQL query is very simple. Type equals whatever you're looking for. And then you set that operator to or, and you can choose multiple and have it satisfy all of them. So the actual experience builder portion is sort of relatively straightforward there. Windows. So what do we have to do next to sort of finish this thing off? So we have to determine the relationship between the assets and the actual recreation points. And when I wrote this, we hadn't done that yet, and now we have. Basically, the result was Parks Maintenance wants it their way, and they'll communicate changes to us. So I had written some code where it's basically said, in these cases where we have a one-to-one relationship, a drinking fountain in the assets is a drinking fountain in the parks recreation. Push a new point whenever one gets created. And that can be kind of handy, but Since it's not the entirety of the list, and we got to a point where we had to discuss the tennis courts and the volleyball courts. Once it was determined that those were not going to be something that we would have relied on that rule to create new points, we just decided to scrap the whole thing, because if you expect something to get created if there's an equivalency and it doesn't, that creates confusion. So we're doing it the old-fashioned way in that regard. I think my icons are okay, but like I don't know, not that good. I think it'd be interesting to pay a graphic designer to actually make a good consistent looking set. And then we need the staff to go out and actually take the pictures. And my PowerPoint didn't save, but that was actually on here too. They're doing it right now. Maybe not like right now, but right now. So theoretically, we should start to see some of those photo attachments roll in. And to help them out with that, we basically just built a field maps application, joining the recreation points layer to the attachment feature class, and just said, if there is no attachments, if that's a null attachment, give it a big red circle so they know where to go out and actually take pictures, and they don't have to sort through all the ones that already do have those. So some resources. I'll make these slides. I can send these out or send them to John if he wants to compile all the presentations from today. And then I will also add the link to this widget that I uploaded to the Esri community a couple of days ago. So if you want it, you can download it yourself and spruce up your own park finder. Or you can email me and I'll send it to you.